Derek Wheatley, and welcome to episode 205 of the Wheatley podcast. Thank you very much for joining me. Time of recording 7:55, New Year's Eve. Where's my pen? How are you all doing? Thanks for listening last week, by the way, to me talking about films again and rounding up an episode I did a little while back. I had a conversation with a couple of people who listened to the podcast and went away and watched a film that I mentioned, or put a film on the list. And I guess that's what I kind of wanted to happen. That people would be curious to watch something that maybe they had heard of it, maybe they hadn't. But if they had heard of it, they hadn't got around to it, and that's what they wanted to do. And I'm delighted that happened. Like, that people took something away from it, because I don't want to be on these solo episodes in particular. I don't want to be just talking into a mic, and I know people enjoy them and things like that. But if people can take something from them, rather than just an hours of someone talking and enjoying that, which is obviously great, but moving on to the next thing, and to be able to take something from it, it's important to me. If you want to support us, you can go on to buy me a coffee. The link is in the description on YouTube, and I think it's on our no, it is, because I do it. It's on the podcast platforms as well. You'll find the link there. So look, you don't have to do it, of course. We just enjoy doing this. So the title of this podcast, I'm sure you've already seen it, but it's "You Don't Have to Change." Now, some of this you will be thinking that I'm contradicting myself, but I hope I can put my point of view across in the way I want to. It's in my head. But sometimes the way I formulate something in my mind and the way it comes out of my mouth is not the same thing. So hopefully I can do this justice. Since I mentioned that I was doing this, I was talking to some people about it. Because I did an episode about resolutions. I don't know if it was last New Year's or the one before that. I should have checked before I start recording this. And yeah, resolutions is not always being a good thing, or maybe, again, no research done on this, but maybe I talked about resolutions that I was going to do. Who knows? I mean, I literally could have gone back and listened to it, but I do like the idea of. I don't like the idea of repeat myself, but I do like the idea of just kind of contradicting myself. And someone goes, "But you said," and then I have to argue myself out of that corner. And we all love a good argument now again, even if we don't like admitting it. Like a friendly argument, I mean. Um, so, you know, I suppose the real basis of this episode is going to be about resolutions and kind of the societal pressures we have on us of making these resolutions. Because whether we like it or not, that's where it comes from. The idea that every year has to be we start afresh. It's literally just a date going from one year to another. But because we've built this up to be, something more significant, which is fair enough if you want to like go and have a party and have a drink and celebrate the new year coming in and sing Old Lang Syne and all that stuff. Old Lang Syne, Old Lang Syne, Old Lang, yeah. Um, but the idea that we have to make these big changes is kind of, it can be detrimental to ourselves, both physically and emotionally and mentally, obviously, as well, like with the mental health side of things. Because I know from myself and from conversations I've had that, if you make a resolution, they tend to be fairly big statements, and then immediately it's the pressure that we've put on ourselves to do this. So say you've decided that you want to do, we'll just say kickboxing, right? This is just you can apply anything to this, obviously, but I'm going to say kickboxing. So you say you want to do kickboxing, and it's not that you want to go and win the world championship. It's nothing to do with that. You just want to try something new, or you want to do something new, and you do something like kickboxing, which I'm an outsider in that sport, and from the outside looking in, it looks tough, right? So you go in, and at the beginning, you are getting your fitness up, your cardio up, you're hitting pads, you're hitting the bags, you're getting taught certain techniques, how to move correctly, to punch, how to kick, how to, block and all that. See the way I don't know anything, but I'm just putting out those very, the usual terms. But anyway, and then it gets to the point where maybe 2 months in, um, you have to spar then. So look, when Martin gets the lads in the gym to spar, it's not they're not killing each other. That's not the point of it. But there's contact then. You're wearing your shin pads and stuff, and um, and it's not like full on headshots. Goes without saying. It's not like, I'm sure some gyms do that, which is ridiculous. But I know Martin doesn't do that in Fusion, so I've seen some of the sparring. But my idea was always, I'm not getting hit, so I don't want to do kickboxing. So say someone has the same idea. So they've loved the kit and the bads. They've loved, getting the movements going. Their fitness is flying. And then they get a kick to the head. It's a soft kick. It's partially blocked, say, by yourself because you've learned how to block. And but it rattles you a bit. Or you get a straight punch to the nose, and your nose bleeds a little, because that can happen too. Like, because some people, nose will bleed at like a mere flick. And all of a sudden, this whole idea of kickboxing no longer appeals to you because you were so dedicated and so into it for that first 2 months until you got hit. And then you think, well, it's not for me. And to me, that would seem like a natural reaction. To others, that would gear them on. But we're going to go on the side of this for this argument. We're going to say that this person, it doesn't like to be hit. So all of a sudden, they're like, oh, maybe this is a bad decision. It's not for me. So they decide, they don't come in for a week. Um, they're chilling out, and they're doing their usual thing they did before kickboxing. Those evenings they went in, they're now not going in, and that becomes more of a routine then, not coming in. And the idea of getting kicked and hit has become silly, because it is to me in my mind, but it comes silly to this person. So they stop doing it. And what happens when you stop doing something like that, when you've decided, I really have to do this because this is a big thing and it's a resolution and blah, blah, blah. And then they're hard on themselves, and then they beat themselves up, and then they're kind of miserable about the idea that they couldn't do kickboxing, they're a failure, they can't take a little kick to the head, but you know what I mean. Um, and all of a sudden, what started in the year as a resolution has become this kind of, heavy weight on you, that you wanted to do something and you couldn't. You weren't able, you weren't tough enough, all that stuff that goes along with that. And we've all been there in certain situations. And so I don't like the idea of that, as like, that idea of building up resolutions to only fail. And you want to, if you look, if you want to call it a failure or not, that's fine. It's like, fail sounds harsh, but I'm just using it again because that's the way you'll see it if you don't complete what you wanted to do. You see yourself as a failure, and then you're like, you've taken the step forward, but now you're two steps back, and now you're in March and beating yourself up over something. And I just don't think it's worth it. I think it's silly, and um like, we can do it, but we have to think about it better, as in, maybe certain things don't suit us and we shouldn't make these big promises to ourselves. And that's kind of, using that kickboxing analogy as an example. I think it's important for us to remember this going in. Like, this will be out on, what is it now, 31st, so first, second, 3rd January. So you might already be in the middle of your resolutions, and you don't even know what's going to hit. I know, that's actually a joke. Um, but so the title you don't have to change is flexible, I think. Um, so when I asked myself, like, will I be changing in the new year? I'd like to think I'd be making improvements to my life or what I'm already doing without making big changes, because I don't need that hit, on my mental health, that I could do without it. So I think this is my mindset going into it. I'm going to try and think of it as improvements that I'm making rather than big sweeping things. And I'm going to talk a bit about them later on. But it's important to kind of, for me to note that, like, that it's not. I don't think there's anything that I'm going to be taking up or improving on that I'm going to drop at any point. I'm making like a conscious effort of that, and that might sound silly because the person who's doing the kickboxing might have thought that, but it's quite a big jump going into something like kickboxing, so it's a different thing. Um, Another thing I noticed, and this kind of I've used this for the last 2 or 3 years, maybe a bit longer actually. And I haven't always had like resolutions or changes or improvements. So it's not been a yearly thing. But I think one thing that's good to do if you can, um, is to not talk about the changes you want to make. The reason, and obviously I can only use myself for example. So if I was to tell someone that I'm going to do something, um, or I'm going to change something up, there's an even bigger pressure on the thing then, because we all think as humans like we don't want to let people down, or we don't want people to look at us as if we're failures, or that we didn't do or what we wanted to do. And oh, like that idea of like, oh God, here he goes again. Like, he said he was going to do this and he didn't. Now he does this, and it's the whole thing. I can't really deal with that kind of thing. So my idea is to, if you like, you don't tell people, and that pressure goes. But also another part of it is like you have to try and give yourself a break. Like, don't be so hard on yourself when you're going through struggles, because it's not necessarily a thing where, going back to the analogy I was using, that if someone didn't go for a week, that was the end of their time in kickboxing, because of course they can go back at any point. So it's easier if we do stop doing something for a week, that we don't, um think in a kind of, like, it's kind of catastrophizing when I talked about that before, like, because I don't go into the idea of, so you throw the baby out with the bathwater. Because it's over. I haven't done it in a week, but that's the end of that. I'm going to sell my gloves. Go into this kind of spiral of disappointment and letdown, and that's not what it should be, because we're not. We all should allow ourselves these moments where we don't feel that we can do something, or we're not, we're not at our best, because we do have to have break weeks as well, like for our body, for our minds, and all that. So that's another thing, just kind of, it not be as self-critical as we are, or I certainly am, um, and like, allow these kind of small, steady changes, that we're making, because there's so many things that we try to do, like, oh, we're going to lose however many stone, or I'm going to go to the gym every day. And that's like most of the fittest people don't go to the gym every day. Like, there has to be rest days as well. I know I'm using analogies that are to do with fitness and stuff, but that's obviously because I'm in that world, or around it, and I see it, and I see the influx of people coming into the gym in January, and obviously people stay around, the new people, but not all of them, and some will drop off. And I think is like we feel a certain amount of pressure as coaches to make them feel comfortable, but also make them feel that this isn't as daunting as it looks. But I've heard Martin many times will say, like, when you start in there, oh look, Martin could easily turn around and say, oh, sign up for you know, um, the full membership, where you can come in whenever, and whenever you want, you can do as many classes as you want, unlimited. Martin will often say, like, start off with the 2 classes a week, maybe 3 classes a week, depending. But he could easily do that for the money. He go to the unlimited membership, but he wants them to come back indefinitely. So, it makes sense that they'd have, if they're starting from a level of fitness where they're not going to be able to kind of do 2 classes every day. It's good to just do 2 classes a week and get warmed up and get used to it. So we have an idea that we want to present that to them, and not overwhelm them with exercise, and because they can look around other people and go, I can't do this. So it's like allowing those kind of small, steady changes, and like not making, excuse me, not making, I don't know why I had to pick that up. Because I've got OCD probably. I'm not making those slow and steady changes, or sorry, making those slow and steady changes and allowing it to be like that, because it's a year. We have a year to do these things. It's not, it's not a, there's no time limit on it. I suppose that's what I'm trying to say from the start without actually saying it. Um, that all these things that you want to do, improve, change, all these resolutions, there shouldn't be a time limit on it, like, because it's very easy to say, I want to lose a certain amount of weight in this time, but then there's literally a clock on you. And if you hit that clock, gets down to zero and you haven't lost the weight you want, well, then you see yourself as a failure. You're not a failure, but that's how you see it. And I see myself like that as well, by the way. I'm not some guru that knows all this. These are just ideas that I've had and failures that I've had in the past, or how I felt were failures. And they weren't failures. They were just, I put too much pressure on myself, and internal pressure and external pressure. Um, matching yourself with other people who have different, maybe someone else might be doing the same idea as you, but we all like different body types, and we can't all do the same thing. It's just our bodies are all different. So, that's a big thing for me, I think, is to go nice and easy and not go on a mad one. Um, and then I was thinking about, like if we're saying like you don't have to change and stuff, but I was thinking about like what motivates us to change. Like where's the like how does this motivation come about? Where do we get it from? Um, why do we see ourselves as failures if we don't get to a certain point? Like, uh, why do we go, well, I thought I would have the motivation, but clearly I didn't. And, other people have this immense motivation that we should have. Like, we'll see them on Instagram and they're shouting at the cameras, or they're doing their pull-ups 60 in a row or something. And you might be struggling to get one with a band to help you. Um, that's like an elastic band, not a guitar and drums. Um, I just noticed for the first time, I think this is the first time I've ever noticed this. So if you're watching this on YouTube, I'm actually, my reflection is on the screen behind me, or on the poster behind me. Never seen that happen before. It's just the angle I obviously have the screen at, but it's kind of weird now that I've got a little head on my shoulder as such, rather than a chip, if you know what I mean. Um, a bad joke. So the idea of like what pushes us to change and the bravery that it takes to change. And I was thinking of like big figures in the past, and Bob Dylan as an example of someone who made a big change and was lambasted for it, and booed at his own concerts for it because he decided to go electric when he was, obviously began as a folk singer. And someone like, if you read Malcolm X's book, his autobiography, about his idea of other people, white people, was, as hateful as the ideas that, white racists had about black people. And then he went to, and it's not as easy as this, by the way, I'm shortening it for the podcast, but you should read the book. That he went to Mecca and he noticed that there was all people from all colors and creeds. Um, and he just he changed, his idea changed around that. And that was a big thing for him and for the people around him, because he had surrounded himself with people who had similar ideas. And that's a difficult thing as well. Like it's like when I stopped drinking, and I the friends that I had at the time were all, that's what we did. We went drinking, and we didn't meet outside of that and go to the cinema or anything. It was just we went drinking. And I've kept in touch with a couple of them, but we haven't hung out, like, because they still go to the pub. And look, it's not that not all that, some of them are in relationships and all of that stuff. But when you make these big changes, it's a scary thing, because it's got like obviously benefits, but there's a fallout to it all. Um, and but like, I know I'm all over the place here a little bit, but even the idea that you hear the stories of ex-convicts, for instance, who come out of jail and they they change themselves and they start maybe working for charity organizations, and it's like we would see them as having seen the light. Like, but what was, they could have gone back the other way. Obviously, you get that term scared straight, but you still have to change a whole mindset that you had in the past, whether it was from, what you saw in your childhood, or what you, growing up, who you hung out with and stuff like that. You had to change all of that, and lose a lot of people along the way, and people that you would put time into and develop these relationships. And those big changes must have been so scary. Like I don't know, like using Bob Dylan as an example is completely different to Malcolm X, but it's just the idea of if you're in a comfort zone where you can keep selling album after album like Bob Dylan was, and then you decide one day. Now I don't know if he like had an idea that he's going to get booed. It was at the Newport Folk Festival. That's pretty cool that he decided to do that at a folk festival. But that's the first time he went electric, and Pete Seeger was wanted to cut the power supply because he was so appalled by it all, and he got like roundly booed. And maybe he didn't know that was going to happen. But then when he went to England for a tour and he's getting booed, and there's audio uh, clips of it, and someone shouts out Judas, and there's a whole kind of backstory to that. But he kept to it, like because that's what he felt was the right direction for him. But that's incredibly brave on a huge front, on an international stage. Same as Malcolm X, he was a very powerful figure at the time, and for him to do that, he must have lost a hell of a lot of followers and people around him. And that's very difficult because it's safety in numbers, and I don't. And I think we all kind of feel that. I like to be on my own, but there's a safety in knowing that there's a family and friends, network around you that if you're in trouble, they've got your back. But if I decided to come out and turn into the opposite of Malcolm X and be a huge racist, I'd like to think that my family members would disown me, and they would be right to do it. Um, but those are kind of the big changes I'm talking about, and I don't think I don't think any of us listen to this podcast. I may be wrong, but any of us are in that situation. But imagine like if you are to make these changes and these, when you want to call them resolutions, changes, improvements, all those kind of things, you do have to be brave with it. But you have to, I guess, know that around you there might be some not fallout, that's too strong a word, but there might be some people who disagree or some people who think that you don't need to do this, you don't need to lose weight, and you don't, whatever it might be, you ultimately have to make a decision. But just remember like that there's other people, and I think some people give, by the way, better than me, give great advice on these kinds of things. And I'm lucky to have people in my life who do as well. So I think it's good to talk about people if it is going to be a big change. If it's not, if it's just going to be improvements and stuff, obviously do it on your own and don't tell people because you don't need to tell people. Um, but you can surprise people afterwards going, oh, look, you remember I was crap on the guitar? Look how good I am, that kind of stuff. So, yeah, man, just those examples of big changes and being in the public eye and things like that. You do have fallout, you do lose people along the way. And I do think resolutions, whilst not having that kind of impact, it can have a kind of a small impact on your life, which you maybe you don't need. Let me have a drink of water. So I'm going to try something, if you don't mind. So I used to read the ad out all the time, and I haven't read it out in a while because it was getting kind of boring and stale. Because I really need to do something with Martin to do a new one. But because it's the 3rd of January when this comes out, I'm going to do the ad, and I do not have it in front of me. I have not looked at it since the last time, but it's in my head, and I'm going to try and recite it. Okay, here we go. Fusion Training Center, Monksland Athlone. Place to train in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, kickboxing, martial arts, and CrossFit. A great atmosphere with experienced coaches and a real sense of community. If you want to join the team, find us on Facebook at Fusion Training Center or drop in for a chat. Fusion Training Center, train like a warrior. Now that was pretty good. And at all times I felt I was on a tightrope. It must be about 30 episodes since I read that out. And it goes to show that my memory is not as bad as I think it was. That because I always people will know the real ones will know who've been with me from the start that I used to read that out with the copy every single time. So that's all right. I'm still of sound mind. They won't be asking me who's the president of the United States in a doctor's office anytime soon. But I do. I'm happy that I could recite that. So look, but like I said, if you are around the Athlone area and you have been listening to this and you do want to make a change or improve your health or you know don't try and follow what I'm talking about and listen to your coaches. Is what I'm saying. We have a good idea what you should be doing to begin with, and then we'll work on the other stuff after. All right. Um. The other thing I kind of thought about as well in relation to myself was about the benefits of staying the same and still enjoying things. That there's a time for anything to start, and you can begin anything at any point. And people make a point of it's like don't start quitting cigarettes on a Monday. You should do it like during the week. And I've heard that a number of times. I don't know if it makes, or I don't know how much of a difference it makes, but I'm sure you've all heard it, but there is something to say for staying the same, and that if you are happy and you're enjoying your life, and there might be a couple of things here and there that you might want to change or improve or all that. Doesn't have to be on the 1st of January, so taking away, I think, immediately takes away that pressure of the idea of like I have to, from the 1st of January on, I have to do it, because then we're all on the same clock. And then I think if you're in a group of friends and you've all said, well, this is what I'm going to do in resolution, and this is the resolution I'm going to do, and all that, if you fall away or you don't complete what you wanted to do, and that, like, it becomes a kind of a thing within the group or the family, yeah, sorry, group of friends or the family. And then you feel not only disappointed that you didn't do what you wanted to do, but you also feel like you couldn't keep up with people, or um, you're the weak one. And by the way, when I'm talking about this kind of stuff, I've been there and felt this, like you're the weak one, you couldn't do what you wanted to do, all that kind of stuff. So I fully understand what it's like. So when I talk about that, I just want to make sure that people know that I'm basing most of this on real life experiences, and stuff that I've gone through, and you maybe seen other people go through. So there's nothing wrong with staying the same. And if you're enjoying your life for now, well, that's all right. Like, keep enjoying it. If you're gonna, don't rock the boat, is what I'm saying, because it's not worth the boat is not worth rocking. Okay. Um, but it's about, and this sounds like simplistic and maybe naive, but I think some people have this down to a T, and I love it. Like when you hear, and again, having, being in a job with so many people doing so many different things, some people are just happy, like, and they do what makes them happy. And they don't, they avoid rocking the boat. And it's like, I wonder, what is it in human nature to always feel that we need to improve or we need to change things? Because, I'm sure you've all seen the people like dive bombing their lives, like, because, everything was fine. And then all of a sudden I did this and it wasn't. But why did you didn't really need to do that. And like it's almost like people get bored, and if people are in a good place, they get bored, and then they'll just go, they'll do what they want to do, just go off on one and just wreck it. And it's sad, and and like I'm saying, I don't understand it. I don't, I've had moments where I felt like content, and things have been going well. I don't think I've ever been in a place where I've completely obliterated things by trying to change things up when things were going well. But I've definitely done stuff where I've things are going well and I've just thought, well, I can kind of cruise along now. And that's not what I'm saying, because I don't think any of us want to cruise along. But I think if things are going well and you're happy, this isn't the time to change it, because again, you're putting clocks on things. You're putting like the 1st of January is when this began. And I think that's something that I've been in before. And I've done, like, this is not just about New Year's. We're just talking about resolutions now, obviously. But like, if you, like I said, if you try and give up smoking in May or whatever, and you have the date in your head, it's a thing. It's like, oh, it's 21 days now. It's 30. Like, why do we have to count it? I wonder. Like, why does it? But at the same time, I'm always like, well, I gave up drinking like 14 years ago. So maybe it's just, again, something that's in us that we need to mark off to prove to ourselves of how, what a kind of victory it's been for us. So maybe it is that, and maybe I shouldn't be talking like I am, saying like we shouldn't do this and shouldn't do that. But if you're happy, keep it that way. So sorry, I'll have another drink again. So speaking of, I thought I'd talk a bit about myself. I hope that kind of made sense. Um, it's kind of the ramblings of a madman at 8 a.m. in the morning, but I hope some of us will take something away from it. So I bought a synth. Um, um, so I, I was in a pub with my friend about 16 years ago, and we were having, I was drinking at the time, we were having a pint. we were actually in the palace in Athlone, and a song by Hot Chip came on. Now, myself and my mate are guitar players, and we had been in bands, and we've always hung out together. We tried to even do a band together. Didn't work out, but we've always had that. And Hot Chip came on, and I said to him, "That's the kind of music I want to make, right?" And you remember, this is such a long time ago now. And I don't think he was really impressed. Because, like I said, we were guitar players. And if you don't know Hot Chip, they're a band with, well, they do have one guitarist, but the other four are on keyboards and synths. But ever since that, I've had this fascination with the sound of synths. And synths, I suppose, have come, really came into the fore in the 80s. But, there's been all sorts of synths, like the Beatles used one, and there's been many used in the 70s as well. But it was kind of, they were really popular in the 80s. And then they really took a revival in the 2000s or maybe the 2010s. And there was different bands who were writing around the idea of synths and the Eurythmic sound. And I've always had this idea that I want to buy a synth, and I was lucky enough to get some from money from my parents and from my granddad over Christmas. And I was like, right, I'm going to order this synth, So it arrived the other day. Now I haven't had a chance to play it yet, and I will today because I have a bit of time to myself, and I can't wait. Now, this is what I would suggest is an improvement in my life rather than like a big thing, because I play a couple of instruments and, to varying degrees of success, it has to be said. But the synth is like a different thing because it's got so many buttons and little knobs on it and all this kind of stuff. And it's going to take a while to work out, but it's kind of like one of those, it's like a little adventure or something. It's very exciting, I suppose, for me as someone who's like, I've got an electric piano. It's not working at the moment. Anybody know how to fix electric pianos? But that's always had a lovely sound, like the piano sound and the electric piano sound, and it has loads of different settings. But it's not quite the same as a synth. The sounds you can get out of a synth, and you can record stuff on different tracks, and you got a bass lines and drum beats. You can literally record a song on it. Um, if you're listening to this podcast, you will hear at the very start this Calvin did a synth version of a song that I wrote. That's what the title track is, and he used this kind of synth on that. So I want to kind of play stuff like that and just something different. But I think it's an improvement because it's finding something else musically that you haven't done before, but that you want to do. So that's an exciting addition to my instrument collection. And yeah, like I said, I'm really looking forward to it. Another thing that's going to be an improvement, and this is, some of you might be questioning the stretching of the word improvement that I'm using now, but I did actually book a theory test, a driver's theory test on for the 17th of January. Now, you see, what I've just said earlier on, I'm putting this out here now, and this is going to be a pressure on me because people who listen will know on the 17th of January that I'm going to do one of these tests. And if I fail, will I feel like a failure? No, not really. If I fail, I'll just do another one. That's all. It's easy. But in my own mind, obviously, I want to pass the first time because I feel, well, I know the roads, I'm on the bike. But then I was talking to someone the other day, and it was like, when you're on the bike, not every sign is for, you don't have to adhere to every sign. I know people are going to think that sounds mad, but sometimes you're up on a footpath, you won't even see a sign. Or obviously I stop at traffic lights. I'm not one of those cyclists, but and I slow and I need to slow. But there's all sorts of different things for drivers, and I need to do a bit of studying before that. But I have 3 weeks, 2.5 weeks to do it, so I think it'll be all right. But everybody does say that to me, like, "Oh, you'll be grand, you're smart." But like, that's not. I don't know if that's smart. That's just like, that's just like studying. It's just, well, no, it's just like studying. It's a test. So sorry, yawn. That might be the first yawn ever on the podcast. I shouldn't have stretched, but it's. I'm gonna get the actual proper app and study it on there, from or in the next couple of days, and do a proper one because I think if you want to do something, like, it's good to do it right and get that done the first time, because what's the point in doing it and then 3 weeks later you have to go again? It's just a pain. Um, and I have this idea in my head about like the manual automatic debate, and I have a good friend who's automatic, and it looks so easy. It just looks way more easy, but then the manual is like, should I learn? should I learn manual and then it's easy to drive automatic anyways if you already know manual, but at least you know manual. If you learn on automatic, you can't the switch over is going to be very tough if you have to switch over for whatever reason, like if you have to drive someone else's car and don't even know if that's allowed. It's not allowed, is it? You have to be short in someone else's car. Yeah, I'm sure that's what it's, but it'd be nice to learn both. That's what I'm saying. But I think I'm I think I'm nervous about like driving in general. I've always been a little bit uneasy in a passenger seat. If someone's overtaken, if I'm in someone's car and they're overtaken and I see a car coming, I can never judge it. So I'm always like, oh no, they you shouldn't have done that in my head. Obviously, I wouldn't be one of those backseat drivers. Um, so I'm always like, I can never judge that distance. So I think I'm going to be that annoying person that sticks right to the back of someone the whole time. But I also do have an idea of not turning it into, I'm not going to be driving to Dublin. Um, it's a little like kind of a spin around, around Athlone and the surrounding areas. If you want to go out somewhere for a walk or whatever outside of Athlone, fair enough. But I don't have no interest in going to Dublin or anything like that. So I still think like, when I go to Dublin, as some of you will know, I always go on the train. I think the train is really comfortable as well. And I get my Lewis and then my Dart and I'm out to Blackrock. So it's kind of the route is mapped for me now and I'm comfortable with it. I think if I was to throw in, uh, like driving a car and trying to figure, there's one particular part. I can never remember the name of the road. See, that's another thing about not driving that you don't know the name of the roads. Um, and you go off a round thing, a round thing, a road on. I think it's onto the M50, but it's this. It's like a semicircle, I suppose. But it's just it. I don't like it at all. And this is me in a passenger seat, with a good driver behind the wheel, and I just don't. I've no desire to be doing that. So for me, going to work yesterday morning, spilling rain. I saw one of those murmurations, this. I think that's what they're called, aren't they? When the flocks of birds are just flying all over the place in rhythm, and they just went over my head. And then I was like, I'm glad I was on a path because I was looking up in the air like a dope, on the bike. And then when I got to a kind of a hill that I go up towards a roundabout, and they passed over my head again. They were only about lampshade height, um, and they went over my head again. It was incredible. But sorry, I got sidetracked there. Like I really like I love the formations and the way the birds figured that out, and they just without bumping into each other. Or maybe they do bump into each other. We don't know, do we? But they're spectacular. But when I was cycling to work yesterday, it was raining and it was cold, and I was wearing like a snood and everything. And I was thinking, these are the days that you want the car. And everybody says to me now, "Oh, you'll do that at the start, you won't drive, and then after a little while, or sorry, you won't cycle, you won't drive on dry days, and after a little while, the bike just keeps going back on back. I don't think that's the case because I actually do like cycling, and I like cycling my bike that my dad got me a while back. It's an electric bike, and to zip in and out of work on a warm day or a dry day is nice, but having the car for those wet days will be an extra bonus. So that's an improvement of my life. I'm not going to call it a resolution because I don't feel it is. Um, but I think it's an improvement on my transport situation. There's another thing. I think I always say the same thing. I think I talked about this before. Who knows at this stage? 205 episodes. Um, but I found this. So I haven't been reading as much as I used to. I have two books on the go. I'm about to have a third book on the go. I got a loan from Joanna, the Rick Rubin book, that he brought out a little while ago. I'm really looking forward to reading that. So so there's gonna be three books on the go, but I'm not reading as much because I've been seduced by the crossword. Um, I find this thing in the crossword is so peaceful to do a crossword. Uh, and maybe more peaceful than even something like watching a film or reading a book. And I say it because if I'm the concentration and the involvement that needs to be taken in a crossword is it can be flexible, right? So you can be completely engrossed, but you can also have a film on the background or something on TV or whatever you might have, and you can be doing the crossword at the same time and just thinking like there's a clue and you're just thinking about it and you're trying to work through the different words it might be, and I know I'm just explaining the crossword there, but you know what I mean. And they're just very the ones I do are online on the New Yorker, and you get there was one every day. But what I'm finding now, because there's only one every day, I've gone back into their archives and started to do older ones. So some of the references in certain parts are a little bit like older. I say older, it's only a couple of years, but um, there's something amazing. Like my mom has done one she does them every day, like since I can remember, and it never rubbed off on me that because me and my mom have similar interests, like books and films and music, and we're really into that, like, and so it's never like that was one thing I'd never thought I would take up or inherit from her, and it seems like I have. And my dad gave me a book of crosswords recently, so I have a big book of crosswords to do as well. So I'm swimming in crosswords, but I don't know. Um, Oh, by the way, I started because my mum came back from the States with a New Yorker magazine, and there was a crossword in the back, and I really enjoyed doing it. I was like, I wonder, like, is there any online that I could do? No, I wasn't even thinking New Yorker at the time, and I was looking for stuff, and then I went to New Yorker, and they're sometimes they're challenging, something they're like moderately challenging, sometimes they're beginner friendly. So it's just like a look at the draw kind of thing. But yeah, and there's something very satisfactory about finishing them. And the thing you can do, I noticed this, I was doing this at the start. So what you can do is you can have it on where if you put in the wrong letter, it puts a mark through it saying that's the wrong letter. So you can go back and then you can go for something else. So for a beginner, that's kind of handy. But I think I'm going away from that. There's still crosswords. The challenging ones are tough because sometimes you get American expressions in there and sometimes you get questions about American politics and stuff. And it's like you might know the answer or that. So it's literally a guessing game at that point. But I just want to mention how relaxing they are. So I want to have that, but I also want to find time for the music that I love and films and books, and to get a kind of a happy medium. I think another problem happened with the crossword was I was reading three novels by Samuel Beckett, and I'm reading Naomi Klein's new book called Doppelganger, which is very interesting. But they're heavy, and I think I needed something a bit lighter, and the Crosswords came along at the right time. And look, I'm delighted. I'm delighted I got that magazine off my mom, and all of a sudden now I'm like, and it's improving your, you know, it's improving your language. You don't have to lift up a thesaurus every time. That's what I was doing when I was writing. When I used to write short stories in a novel and stuff, I used to pick up the thesaurus and like try to figure out like how I could use this word again, but like in a different way. Those were the days, folks. Those are the days. But I do want to find the time. So when I think like what I have written down here, I have so am I a hypocrite for changing things and being you don't have to make changes, but you don't have to. I said this means it doesn't mean you can like, but am I making changes there? I guess the big change, if you wanted to call it, would be the driver's thing. I don't think like buying a synth is a change. It's just learning a new instrument, so it's an improvement on your already like your skills. But I think that's we talk about that anyway, about striving to improve. I want to improve as someone who does jujitsu. Like, I want to get my purple belt this year by this time it's out. So that's going to be an improvement. It's not a change because, it's not a something that you perfectly, brought about. That's a natural change in jiu-jitsu. If you keep turning up, you're going to get better and then you're going to get higher belts and stuff. And that's just so the language I'm using here is iffy enough, basically. So to say, so like there's resolutions, there's changes, and there's improvements. And where do you find yourself? Like, what do you need in your life? That's what I'm trying to say. But what also I'm saying is, don't. let it impact you negatively if it doesn't work this time, because it'll work the next time. You can go again. You can go on the 7th of June. You can go on the 3rd of August. It doesn't matter what date you start something or change something. And don't focus on that. But like, if you want to make a change and stuff and it doesn't work the first time, it'll work the next time. Um, but if this thing, if this change that you want to make is affecting your mental health, well, then it's time to stop and reevaluate what you can do or what you want to do and what's important to you. And it's the new year. Look out for other people as well, because they'll might be on a certain road where it's not gonna work out for them, but they rely on you to be the person who can turn around and say, well, maybe you should drop it for now and go back to it in another date. Put a pin in it and see what happens down the road. But I honestly, I wish you all a very happy new year. Um, I hope you enjoyed the episode. I hope you continue to listen to us. It's a very important thing in my life, and I downplay a lot when people talk to me about it because I don't want to. Well, I don't know what I do. I was going to say I don't want to be big-headed, but it's not even about that. It's not about being big-headed. But I just when someone says I'm doing something well, I'm not good with that. It's an unreasonable attitude to have, but that's how I am. But whatever you want to do, you do it and you do it well. And if it doesn't work the first time, give it a chance another time. Not immediately, but a little bit down the line. I hope you took something from this. You make me, um, uh, when people talk about being proud about doing things, and I've talked about this, about being proud about this podcast, and it almost be and it's almost hard for me to say I'm proud about something, but I'm very proud about this podcast. But I'm also more proud about the fact that people will want to join me like for an hour a week with a guest or not with a guest and just let me ramble and listen to it and maybe agree or maybe like laugh or get get uh, get emotional in a good way about it. But we'll be back next week with a guest, rolling again. As you understand, I'm sure you do that it's hard to get guests around Christmas, so I want to do a couple of episodes on my own. But we do have a guest for next week, all lined up. Won't tell you who it is now, just in case things fall through or whatever. But it's going to be. I'll tell you one thing: if it's the person who I think is coming on, it's going to be fascinating. All right. So I want to thank John and wish himself and Megan a very happy New Year. Also, a massive happy New Year to my mum, my dad, my granddad, Jer and Calvin. You can subscribe to us on YouTube if you wish. We're on Instagram, Facebook, X. Share it with your friends as well if you don't mind, because I think some people will probably take something away from the things we try to say and what our guests say. We're on Spotify, Apple, Google Podcasts, etc. Um, yeah, thank you very much. Happy New Year. Yeah, we'll see you. We'll see you next week. Bye.